Hi guys, welcome to a new video. Today I want to do something a little bit different, and this is a react video to the Aspie World Dan Jones video, Autism in Girls, 5 Social Anxiety Traits You Need to Know. This video has been extremely controversial in the actually autistic community, and I'm talking with the people that don't support Dan Jones. I'm one of those people. I feel like he perpetuates all kinds of misinformation and speaks on subjects that he is not an expert on. I do realize that gender identity is a spectrum, and so is autism. And with that in mind, I just want to kind of like have a little disclaimer beforehand and just let you know that these are my opinions. I believe I'm doing this with fair use, and I'm taking it with a grain of salt, or like a whole package of salt, because for one, he has the term, or he's saying girls, and he's speaking to a woman. So I'm going to play it so you can hear the sound. I'm not going to show the video, and then I'm going to react accordingly with kind of my feedback and just kind of what I think about this. So let's get into it. Here we go.
Trait coming up.
Okay, he's got his
Hey, I'm Dan. I have Asperger's syndrome, ADHD and OCD, and dyslexia. I make weekly videos on this type of content, so if you're new around here and want to learn more, consider subscribing.
Hey guys, I'm Charlotte, and I have a diagnosis of autism, and today I'm going to be sharing some personal experience of my social anxiety traits.
Leave us a comment in the comment section below. Let us know.
Okay, first off, social anxiety is not necessarily a trait of being autistic. Again, it's a spectrum, so it's really going to vary from person to person. For instance, I have anxiety, but I wouldn't say it's social anxiety. It's literally generalized anxiety, which has more to do with PTSD and birth trauma for me specifically than being autistic, which it can be like comorbid with it, but yeah, so let's keep going.
On the spectrum, or if you're like a person who has a loved one or whatever on the spectrum and you're looking at this video to kind of gain some help and experience for them. Hey guys, welcome back to the Aspie World.
To gain some help and experience for them. That doesn't make any sense at all. Oh my gosh. Okay.
I'm super awesome to actually have a guest here today. This is the first collab I've done this year. I've never had another influencer. So Charlotte is actually quite well known for her MTV show on Just the Two of Us, which I'll leave some links down below and some stuff on the screen here if you want to see that. Also, she runs a really cool Instagram account, but importantly, she's launching a YouTube channel. So I'll be leaving the link for that in the description below, that you all have to go down and subscribe and show some love, because we need more females on the spectrum on this platform. So that's super cool.
We need more females on the spectrum on this platform talking about YouTube. I'm sorry, but there's a lot, and the fact that he's making it sound like there's not many. In terms of females on YouTube, I'm on YouTube, there's Badass Activist, there's Neuro Rebel, Christina, there's Agony Autie, there's a lot. So just because somebody is on a tattoo show and is collaborating with him, he shouldn't make it sound like there's not many. It's just the reason probably why he's not saying anything is because other females on YouTube don't, or I'm guessing probably don't like him. So obviously he's going to promote people that he likes. Moving on.
Video for a while, and one of the things we wanted to do was talk about autism in girls and different things. So we decided to talk about social anxiety, since it's such a huge issue, or it's a big, well talked about topic, but I feel like it's not as talked about for girls. You know, I feel like it's always male dominated. There's always males kind of doing this, that, and the other.
It's not as talked about in girls. Okay, first off, she's a woman, and secondly, yes, it is talked about. Like, that's ridiculous. Okay.
In this video, we're literally talking about Charlotte's perspective.
Okay, so if it's her perspective, He shouldn't say autism in girls, 5 social anxiety traits you need to know. If it is particular to her experiences, he could have worded the title of the video completely different so that maybe it's like, Dan Jones interviews Charles or whatever her name is about, her specific autism traits or her, anxiety traits versus the way that he's doing it, because he just contradicted himself by having a title that broad and then narrowing it down to being about one person.
All of those traits and her personal insight and things like that, because I think this is going to be really valuable to all of you guys. So we're going to go through 5 different things, just really sum it up by the end of it and talk about, have a discussion. And if you want to jump in at any single time and add anything in, put it in the comment section below and give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying this type of content. So number 1 is masking. So Charles, do you want to take us through a little bit about masking and some of your personal insight and experience with that?
So one of the things that affects me is masking, and this is something that I'd say most women do on the spectrum, actually.
Okay, he just said it's her experience, and then she's saying this is something most women do. Masking is something that can affect or be, a trait of everybody who is autistic. Not specifically one gender. And again, I said that gender identity is a spectrum, so that already really triggers me. Just saying.
And it's a really, really common trait, and basically it's hiding your traits and pretending to be a version of yourself that is socially acceptable, masking and hiding my traits so that the other person can't suspect anything odd or weird or anything. And what I tend to do is I copy and mimic other people's behaviour so that I can represent a socially acceptable version of myself.
Would you say that this is, you pick up masking from watching like TV and film? Because this is an interesting topic. Like, would you say that you learned social kind of masking from like mimicking people on movies?
It's basically from years of being rejected socially, and so you take characteristics from other people, you're adopting other people's behaviour and characteristics and applying it to your own. It's basically just lying and putting on a front. So you're pretending to be somebody else, you're pretending to be something that is socially acceptable so that you can connect with someone else, but then you're actually hiding your true self.
What kind of effect does actually masking have on you as a person? So if you go through your day and you're masking, obviously you're not being comfortable in your own skin and you're not being you. What kind of effect, what repercussions can that have?
Well, that's had massive repercussions on me, especially as an adult, because over the years it's something that I've done so long that you start to lose sense of self.
So for me, I only learned about masking like recently, like within the past like 3 years. When I was younger, I was always told, you're so weird, you're so different. And even still, I get the same kind of like vibes from people, even if they don't necessarily say it to me. So I don't really mask that much, I would say. I mean, like if I'm going out to a store, I'm going to be very cordial, I'm going to be friendly. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I am like taking cues from a television show or like people I see and copying their behavior. Again, we all cope with things completely differently, but the way that this is being presented leaves a lot to the viewer to kind of take this in as fact, even though he prefaced this with saying, oh, it's her view. Again, the title, it says something different.
And this actually led to me having identity problems because I was hiding my traits so often.
And there's a plug for his merchandise. Of course. Keep being awesome. Peace sign. Okay.
And putting on this front where I was somebody completely different just to fit in, that I didn't know who I actually was.
That's fascinating. Because, like, I think one of the main factors for why females have been not as diagnosed as males is because masking is apparent, and they say, oh, well, you know, they're fine here, they're fine there, or whatever. You know, it's weird that it's now like masking was a thing that we didn't even know existed, but it's now that we're able to put an actual name to it and say it's a thing. I find that quite fascinating.
It's a bit of a tricky thing as well, and I know that there's not a lot out there on women on the spectrum especially, so that's why I'm doing my bit to
Okay, there is a lot about women on the spectrum especially, and then she goes to say that's why I'm doing my bit to raise awareness. Okay, the problem with awareness is awareness doesn't necessarily mean acceptance. For instance, people can be aware of something super toxic, super terrible, super life-threatening, but it doesn't mean they accept it. And I'm not talking about autism specifically, I'm talking about, like, you can be aware that the war happened, but it doesn't mean that you're okay with it, which is why a lot of us gear towards acceptance, not awareness. We say autism acceptance, not autism awareness. We would like acceptance. We don't need you to be aware of something you're not necessarily going to accept. So again, that's a big red flag, and that's not something I'm comfortable hearing or seeing. But that's why I'm doing this video, so I can kind of break down every little thing that is wrong with this video. Again, in my opinion.
So the reason it's a tricky thing is because it's a massive trait, but it also goes against being diagnosed. So if you're actively seeking a diagnosis, then you're so good at hiding it that sometimes not even a professional can diagnose you because you can't see it. Yeah. You've got so good at, especially as an adult as well on the spectrum, you get so used to hiding.
Okay, she just said you're so used to hiding your traits that it's really hard to get a diagnosis as an adult. Honestly, the biggest barrier to getting a diagnosis as an adult is usually money. Because you need to be able to afford a test if the testing around you is going to cost money, which most of the time, I'm in Canada, it's upwards of at least 2,000 Canadian dollars. So, for her to say that it can go undiagnosed, and what she just kind of saying that masking makes it hard to diagnose. There are tests that are done that have absolutely nothing to do with masking. They're tactile tests. They're tests where you're actually holding objects and doing certain things with those objects. It's not necessarily talking. And who's to say that somebody is going to be masking while they're getting their autism diagnosis? That's just something that kind of blows my mind.
In your traits that you are now this brilliant actress that you didn't even know.
And another thing about masking is that, like, you develop coping or like workaround strategies, right? So this is something that I found fascinating. So in terms of, like, a lot of people say, oh, I got diagnosed at X amount of years, and they say, oh, I didn't know you had an issue with that. But then they make, like, workaround coping mechanisms. For instance, like, if you didn't want to talk, your anxiety talking on the phone to order pizza, yeah? Mm-hmm. So anytime you'd be anywhere with you want to order pizza, you'd always say to somebody, oh, can you do it first? I just got to go to the toilet, or I'm just going to go to do something else.
It's simple things like that. So for example,
workaround behaviours.
I am absolutely the worst person in the world to pick up the phone, and I can't make conversation on the phone. I can't do anything that requires an immediate response because I find that is far too much pressure. So I'll let somebody else do it, or for example, if I have to pay for an item, I'll let somebody else do it. You know, it's little things.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it just fascinates me, and I think that this is one of the reasons why we're having a huge gap in the amount of females to males being actually diagnosed. But I think that gap is getting smaller and smaller now. So having things like the National Autistic Society have a new program, a training program for autism in girls. It's really good, and people like yourself doing more advocacy on it.
So he said autism in girls. Again, that is the title of his video. A lot of us prefer autistic girls, or in this case, autistic women would have been a better title. However, discussing autism with Charles, I think is her name, would have honestly been a better title because these are her experiences. Actually, a lot of what she's saying I can't even relate to, and I'm an autistic woman. So again, it's a huge spectrum, and he's presenting this in a very specific, kind of narrow-minded way. And the way that he's reacting to her, I interpret as like, oh, you're talking to somebody completely different than you. Like, maybe he has more in common with her than he's letting on, but he's handling it kind of like a I don't know, misguided interview. Not my favorite. This is honestly like a bit painstaking, but I just wanted to give an alternate perspective on his content.
Be awesome.
So number 2 is selective mutism.
Okay, so number 2 is selective mutism. Do you want to talk to us a bit about selective mutism?
Yes, selective mutism. It's something that affects me mainly when I'm in groups of people. So one-to-one, speaking to someone, I'm pretty good. I'm actually pretty great, especially if we've got something in common to talk about. Otherwise, not really. Not that good.
Yeah, I'm able to say anything.
This is actually something that led to my diagnosis because while I was away filming for MTV, I went out for a meal as a group with some of the other artists, and I literally became stuck. I was trapped inside of myself, and it got to a point where I was so overwhelmed by everything in my environment, and socially especially, that I physically couldn't speak. And it's hard because when you're trying to explain this to someone, because you have to be in that situation to experience it, and there's no way they can test it really. So
how often does that? How often would you say that you experience kind of selective mutism, and what type of situations would you experience it?
Probably and I mean, like, for some bizarre reason, it tends to be more around people my own age.
Okay, first off, again, there are plenty of males and plenty of people who probably are on a different, identify differently from male to female, or whatever they identify, that are going to experience selective mutism. For instance, I don't experience it. And again, I am a female, which is what this video is supposed to be about. I actually do the complete opposite when I'm in a awkward situation. I tend to run my mouth, and I don't really shut up. So that's something that's completely different from me, with trying to relate to this, because I don't at all. I don't relate to that because I'm not a quiet person. I'm not a quiet person. Like, I stream sometimes when I'm making art, and I can talk the entire time if people are just typing to me, and even if they're not saying anything engaging, I still have something to say. So this number 2, like, I don't even know what to say. I'm not saying that other autistic people don't experience it, but again, it's not something that is exclusive to females.
I'm sure if that's because, I don't know, people our age...
Maybe, I think it's because maybe you feel like expected to be a certain way around people your own age.
To act a certain way and behave a certain way.
Yeah, and not be, and saying acting a certain way and being that kind of like typical person when you're not a typical person, so you might feel like, I can't contribute to this situation, so you just kind of climb up or something. I don't know, I'm just trying to figure it out, but it is fascinating. Like, I've experienced this, and it wasn't until you'd said it to me, we were like WhatsApping, talking about doing this video and talking about different things. He's it's like mutism, and I've experienced this when I go to Naomi's mum's house, and we have, like, I don't know, they do like family dinners or like a party.
Family dinners, oh my god.
I just like, and then Naomi says to me, it's like, Dan, you don't speak, like, you don't, why do you engage with people? Why are you speaking and stuff? I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I have no idea why.
There's that pressure there to have to be social and to have to make conversation, and then you're applying even more pressure on yourself.
Yeah. And it just spirals down to, okay, this is never going to happen. I guess, like...
I always have this really intense fear of being judged on anything that I say. Yeah. So then it gets to the point where it's so bad, and I've clammed up so much that anything I do actually say, like any sentence I can actually get out, I give myself a little pat on the back. I'm like, yes, I managed to say something.
Well, I totally get that. I mean, I can appreciate that. And, it is a difficult thing to overcome. So, I mean, maybe you're noticing this in, say, you're a parent watching this, or a guardian, or a loved one, or whatever, and you're noticing these kind of traits in somebody. It's quite interesting. If you're coming across this for the first time, then it may be possible that they have a spectrum condition, because I find this is very...
Okay, so he just said if you're a parent or guardian or somebody who wants to help somebody else, this is a certain condition. Okay, first off, yes, I realize that a huge, vast variety of his audience base are parents. He puppets himself to them because he knows that they're going to watch and share his videos. But to say, like, oh, if you're like a caretaker of somebody, they might have this condition. Like, dude, you're not a freaking doctor, and it's not your place to say. The only person that can really, like, you know, diagnose something like that is probably a medical professional. I mean, I'm not to say that you probably can't do tests online and take those results, but again, the way he is talking to people is that he is an expert who is like going to give you like medical advice. Like, that's how, honestly, that's how that just came off to me. So that really irks me.
Cool. Okay, so number 3 is making small talk, and this one kind of rings true to me as well. I know a lot about kind of like how...
Of course it rings true to you, because it is not a gender-specific thing if people have issues with small talk. And also, it's not necessarily exclusive to people that are autistic. Just saying. I'm not discrediting people who are on the spectrum like myself who have issues with small talk. But again, it is not something that is gender-specific. They could have compared their own traits without, again, using the umbrella of gender to discuss this. Then I wouldn't have had as much of a problem with it as I do.
To make small talk when having a spectrum condition, because that is just like, it's super difficult. So do you want to talk a bit about your experience in it and being a female on the spectrum?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
do you want to talk about your experience of being a female on the spectrum? Again, oh my gosh, like, I grew up being a tomboy, so I still don't necessarily feel super feminine, but then to hear it, like, categorized like that, I am... okay, well.
a lot of people would probably doubt this, and a lot of people that have met me personally, and that's because, I mean, I will make the effort to chat to them, but what I'm actually doing is running off a script of stuff I've learned to say over the years that is socially acceptable, and I'm just repeating myself basically in every conversation with every single person, because when that script runs out, what do I say now?
Yeah, I can totally relate, and like I have a few things that I talk about. One, I'll talk about SEOs with people, and then when they're not interested in that, I'm like, okay, well, I'll talk about politics because I know a lot about politics, right? And if they're not interested in politics, I'm kind of all out. You know, somebody says to me, "I want to talk about cars." I'm like, there's no way this conversation is going to go anywhere. And I find like those situations are like the panic situations. I'm like, oh, what am I going to do now?
It's because as well, like, I mean, it's a common autistic trait that people with autism tend to speak about themselves and speak about their interests. And then you've also got that added factor where you have to actively try to pretend to be interested in that other person when actually
you don't care.
You don't care.
Yeah.
Not everybody is like that. I'm going to reiterate that. Not everybody talks about themselves and acts like they don't care in a conversation. Also, if I'm having a conversation with somebody and they're talking about a subject I don't know anything about, it's not necessarily going to make me uncomfortable. I could learn something. That's your opportunity to perhaps ask questions. But again, this is not something that is specifically gender related. Again.
And it's not that you're not a caring person, it's just that you're very strict on your interests, and that's all you enjoy talking about.
It's really very, very interesting, and I love kind of having conversations with other autistic individuals because you kind of relate to them so much, and it's interesting because
he loves having conversations with other autistic individuals that support his work. Not everybody. Well, let's just make that clear because I just spoke out against him, and I was subsequently blocked on Twitter. So, only people that he approves of. Let's just put it that way.
Through life, just thinking like things yourself, and you talk to somebody, you're like, yeah.
I mean, because me and you can talk loads about autism.
That's right, because we can talk about the things because we have that kind of common ground. But it's interesting when...
It's not necessarily because them two, or whatever, are autistic. You don't necessarily get along with people that are also autistic. Just like you're not going to normally get along with all people in the world. So while it might work for them, that, again, should not be taken as a blanket statement. And that shouldn't be taken as fact either, because, again, not everybody's going to get along with each other. So because they have common ground, these two individuals, does not necessarily mean that everybody who is autistic is going to get along. Just want to say that, because it's being presented as fact.
With like typical people who want to talk about like cars, work, and going out, it's like so weird.
And especially like
typical people that want to talk about cars and work and going out, it's like so weird. Okay, not all typical people or neurotypical people are going to talk about stuff like that. I make art, and just because I'm an autistic person doesn't mean I can't talk to other people about art or can't talk to other people about things that I might not know anything about. Typical people should not be discredited as people that you can have conversations with. Again, just because something doesn't work for him or something works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody or everybody on the spectrum. So again, take this with a box of salt, not just a grain, because you're going to need a whole box.
I mean, I don't have typical interests the girls have, for example, having my nails done.
Typical interests that the girls have, for example, having my nails done. Okay, that is not a typical female thing. There are men that like getting their nails done. There are other people that like getting their nails done. Not just women. I don't get my freaking nails done, but that has nothing to do with the fact that I'm autistic. It's probably the fact that I'm pretty sure I'm allergic to nail polish. So, bleh. Mind exploding right now.
I have no idea what to talk about.
No, it's totally true. Like, so I don't drink alcohol, and like a lot of guys like love drinking beer and all this stuff. So if I meet like Naomi's family members,
I don't drink alcohol, but a lot of guys like drinking beer or talking about beer. Again, that is not a gender-specific thing, and because he's experienced it, does not make that a worldwide whole thing. Okay?
talk about beer and drinking, I'm like, I'm completely out of left field here. I have no idea what's going on, you know, like it just...
It's really difficult. I think it's probably more difficult to find, for people to find common ground with me.
Yeah.
Maybe,
because they're trying to
it must be hard for them as well, because, they must be able to sense when I'm not actually interested, because...
Well, look, I mean, it's like you said, it's a very typical trait of autism, and I feel that, like, if you're experiencing this yourself and you can relate to this, then this is definitely the video for you. And
this is a typical trait of autism, and if you relate to my video, then, like, leave a comment down below. He really, 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 really likes to generalize statements, and I understand that a lot of people interpret this as help. But, you know, he hasn't really put a disclaimer against or about the things that he's saying. Because, again, not everything rings true for everybody else. I don't know how many times I have to say it, but, like, if I could rack his brains, which I wouldn't even waste time on because other people wasted time on, he doesn't listen. You know, I'd just be like, you know what, talk about your experiences, don't talk like you're a freaking expert and have a disclaimer that these are your opinions. But I don't think he does that.
Down below as well, if your experiences, I love to talk to people about the different types of experiences they're having. Okay, so number 4.
Masking small talk. I don't remember what the first one was, but now he's on socializing. So he basically took something that could have all been under the guise of socializing, and split them up. So I just want to say that it kind of encompasses each other. So by picking 5 social anxiety traits, which again, social anxiety isn't necessarily coupled with being autistic, he's just kind of extended out how long this video is going to be.
It's a fear of socializing, and this is a huge one. I mean, socializing for anybody on the spectrum is a very difficult situation.
Socializing for anybody on the spectrum is a very difficult situation. Okay, again, generally speaking, people on the spectrum, like myself, have difficulties socializing. However, I don't believe everybody does. I got my diagnosis and kind of found my route to knowing that I'm autistic, mostly due to light sensitivity. Yes, I have other traits as well, but I can't say that socializing is really difficult for me. I mean, yes, it sometimes takes me out of my comfort zone, but I'm able to do it. And again, my experiences, not his, not necessarily everybody else, which he should have said.
people you don't know, and if it's a large group of people. So let me know, how do you experience that fear of socializing?
Well, I mean, it's not something that other people could notice because, like I said earlier, hiding traits. This applies to this one massively because I basically I get like a lump in my throat, and I feel absolute dread when I know that I have to be social with someone or speak to someone on a personal level. And it's not because they're not interested in people, it's just because I generally am extremely intimidated by people when I first meet them as well. So yeah, it just builds up avoidance issues as well.
Do you feel like it kind of builds up a frustration or an anger? So like if you're forced to be in social situations, you obviously have a fear of it, and then masking comes into play. Does that ever have a kickback? Like, oh my goodness, because with me, because it's different, because males on the spectrum, I just don't, if I'm in a situation where people...
Because it's different in males on the spectrum. I don't know where he gets off saying that like that's fact. Because, again, it's each individual person. I don't think this has anything to do with gender identity at all. Like, God... I don't know, I'm somebody that believes in like LGBTQ2+ rights, and the way that he's presenting this video doesn't make me feel like that is something that he cares about at all. Because if he did, he would know that gender is a spectrum. Again, gender identity is a spectrum, autism is a spectrum. Don't present this like, I don't know, he's presenting it almost as if cisgendered people are the only ones that can experience this in different ways or something. I'm not sure, but it just really rubs me the wrong way.
Expect something of you. We don't really technically have that masking ability, I guess, because the female and male brains do work slightly differently in that respect. And
I think it's because like in general, women are more socially aware. I think.
Right.
Women are more socially aware, I think. Right. This is just two people almost acting like they're experts, and I feel like this is just continuing to perpetuate misinformation, as Dan Jones seems to like to do.
So, I mean, it would really matter to me what other people thought. So, I mean, I know that matters anyway. Like,
no, but it's a thing that you instantly think about at that moment in time. So you're like, okay, I need to get through this, and I need to do this, and again, masking comes into play. But I'm wondering, like, does that have a kickback? So you do you do masking, you force yourself through a fearful situation of socializing. Then, like later on at home, did you ever kick you in the head and just?
Yes, absolutely. So, like, anything that happens, like any social event that happens during the day, I will go home and I will really sit and think about it, and I'll think like, well, I shouldn't have said that, or I should have said it differently, or perhaps did I offend that person, and then it just makes you so scared of just socializing.
Yeah, and even trying to do it.
Yeah, because you just think that I'm useless at this and I'm going to fail, so then it just instills an absolute fear in you. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what makes me so scared to connect with other people.
I know, I think it's because it's the unpredictability of people, because you don't know how people are going to react to anything. And I think that's the fear, is that I don't know how they're going to react. And, it's taken me ages to figure this out, and working on this channel and working with professionals is how I've come to that conclusion, but that's what I think it is.
I think the intense fear as well comes from being socially rejected over the years.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're rejected so often.
And you get used to that fear.
You get, and then
it's not necessarily attributed to rejection. For some people who may be socially anxious, from what I've gathered, it can be PTSD. You're not necessarily going to be, again, not all autistic people have social anxiety. Not all people with social anxiety are autistic. So...
point where, I wasn't treated very well in school. I was quite bullied in school for being the quiet one, believe it or not. And then you're even more scared of speaking because
it becomes a bigger thing.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But and that is the thing. School is like probably the worst place. Like typical mainstream schools, kids can be mean as heck. So this doesn't help, especially for females who are trying their best to mask it. Because again, the females, they're so clever in the way that female with autism is, like you said, they're trying to do all these things, and the guys.
Females with autism. So this is what I mean by him not being an ally of the actual autistic community, because he uses incorrect terminology even when he has been corrected. So
lazy typically in that respect. They don't try those things because I have no idea why, but that's how it works. And I just find it's crazy because bullies can be so horrible, especially to someone who's already trying the hardest, you know? Oh, it's crazy.
Definitely, when you have to make the active effort as well. And you have to, I mean, as people on the spectrum, we do actively have to make more of an effort than the average person because it requires a lot more.
Yeah, it takes way more effort. It's like, just even going to like the store and picking something up is like way more effort involved for someone with autism than it would be for a typical person. Because of all that interaction, the lights, the sound, the stimuli, the people, the socializing, then calculating the money, the worrying, the anxiety, just being outside. Like, it's all of those things add up, and I think it's just, it's crazy. Okay, so number 5 is isolating or isolation. Can we talk about a bit about how you isolate yourself and what isolation means?
So, I mean, this is probably a follow-on from the fear of socializing, because what happens is you get such a big fear of socializing that you become socially avoidant, and this can lead to other mental illnesses as well, like depression, for example. But sometimes, you know what, I can be at home and I can feel really low in myself because my social life's gone out the window because I've just not got the energy to be able to invest in that because I'm busy during the day. And then what happens is I avoid everyone. I start to become depressed.
Yeah, because it's kind of like a catch-22, so you don't want to go out because you're feeling kind of that fear of like, the social anxiety and stuff, and you feel like it's going to take more effort. But then when you don't go out and do those things, you become a bit more recluse, and then it gets worse, and then it kind of plays in your mind, and then your mood starts to dip, and then you're just in a downward spiral.
Also, another thing as well, like, I mean, for example, I can go out with my friends, right, and I'll have an amazing time out with my friends, we'll have a great laugh, and then I'll come home and I'll just cry, and it's because, like you said earlier, all those environmental factors, everything that's all the information your brain is trying to process at one time, it gets to a point where if you want to see me, you're just gonna...
Everybody has their own levels of comfort, discomfort, things they enjoy doing, things they don't enjoy doing, things that are going to wear them out, things that aren't going to wear them out. I personally need to prepare myself mentally when I go out somewhere, but again, this is not gender specific, this is my experience. And this video should have honestly been about social anxiety without the necessarily her social anxiety, her experiences, their shared experiences, not presented as 5 social anxiety traits you need to know. I don't even, anybody that is socially anxious is possibly going to experience all of these things. They may not, but to say this is something you need to know is a clickbait title. Plain and simple.
I'll deal with the fact that text messages are the way to go. But like, I interviewed a guy. I was doing a collaboration video with a guy called Kevin Chapman, who's a really big YouTuber and autism advocate on the platform. And Kevin's got a son called Andy who has autism, and he said to me that every day
he's got a son called Andy who has autism. So Dan Jones needs to freaking stop with this. Like, God, it gets me on my nerves. I don't know when I'm going to be watching another video of his because this already is like Cringe Fest 1000. Like, join the Cringe Festival and watch Dan Jones make a complete fool of himself for clicks and for money because, oh my God, the amount of ads I've just had to watch is pretty extensive. And I hate that I'm contributing to his cash flow, but again, maybe it's good to have a different perspective on this.
Every Monday, Andy would come home from school and just throw up. Like every Monday, he'd come home, throw up, and he's like, "What is going on?" No other day, just the Monday, come home, throw up on the floor. And he's like, "Dan, what's going on?" I said, "Well, he's had, Friday evening, Saturday."
Okay, so he's saying that this child is throwing up every Monday, and then the guy's saying, "Dan, what's going on?" Okay, Dan, are you a freaking doctor? Because you should have told him to go get some medical advice instead of acting like you're Mr. Superhero and you're gonna have the answer for this man. Like, my gosh, you have to have a pretty big ego for somebody to come to you with a medical issue that their child is having and think that you are equipped to handle it. Again, I didn't have any respect for Dan Jones, but this definitely made my respect go, I was at 0 with the respect for him, but now I'm in the freaking negatives.
Sunday to just chill out and be in his own zone and be comfortable, and then he goes into a school environment which throws him all out, and he's having to deal with that all day, and then he just goes crazy sick. So it's kind of...
You're not an expert, dude! You're not an expert on why people get sick. you know what? It could be IBS. Like, it could be a number of different things. Like, I internalized stress when I was younger. It's not necessarily autism if your child is vomiting. And just because it is routine vomiting, like a Monday, like he wants to discuss something like this for some reason on his channel, again, you are explaining what you think to somebody who should be seeking medical advice. Wow.
I can totally understand what, about that. I've not really experienced that myself
You haven't experienced it yourself, and yet you think you're qualified to give advice on it. No words.
I've been used to accident myself for ages, so I can't remember the last time I forced myself to go out of a situation, because like you want to go out and have that fun with your friends. I'm not really bothered. I'd rather just kind of like separate myself, and I think that is the difference between the male and the female on the spectrum.
I think that's the difference between the male and the female on the spectrum. Dude, you need to get your head checked. And by head checked, I mean seriously look deep within yourself. Find some kind of inner peace and realize that you are not some kind of autism god who is, fawned on over, whatever the word is, by like all these moms and all these people who don't realize that there are other resources out there for them that are probably more grounded in facts and truth instead of this kind of YouTube sensationalism that he has going on. And if you've seen his images and all the titles that he uses, as well as like his thumbnails for his videos, his merchandise, his website, his books, you would know that a lot of this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and he's not really trying to help people, because if he was, he would direct them to the proper channels instead of all of this female on the spectrum kind of BS.
The friends I have are the friends that just know how useless I am at maintaining friendships, and they kind of accept that, and they just think, well, Charlotte is the way she is, and if I want to see her, I'm just going to have to give her a call. Or
yeah, and there's nothing wrong.
She is the way she is, but she does not represent a whole gender of people or a whole group of people. Let's just get that clear. Why wasn't the video actually titled correctly?
And I think that being proud of who you are as well is going to definitely help overcome any kind of stigma about those things. Okay, so just want to say thanks for Charlotte to come down and actually do the video. It's super awesome.
Being positive about things is going to end a stigma. You know what's going to end a stigma? Stopping misinformation.
I'm looking forward to getting a tattoo from you sometime in the
And of course, talking about tattoos. I feel like I'm the only person in the world that doesn't have or want a tattoo. So, you know what? Good for him that he can afford that. But again, these were my thoughts on his video, and it actually, I think, was the first time maybe I watched one of his full videos, because I really haven't wanted to. But because of his recent behavior and people telling me that I have nothing to back up the fact that this was misinformation, now I do. So hopefully you learned something, and I have other videos, and I'm not looking to become a YouTube star. I just wanted to share my personal experiences, and I try to preface them every time by saying that they're mine and they don't necessarily reflect the views of others. So thank you so much for watching, and maybe I'll make another video soon. I don't know.